have we, this most recent generation, done the same thing? And over on the other side of the House of Commons right now sits a government that doesn't even recognize the obligation. So it falls to us. It falls to us to start preparing the way in places like Halton to show people not just that we've got better values, that we're nicer people, that there are people that can relate to and hopefully trust with government, but that we can give the people a sense of where the country has to go and that they need to be part of it. You know, it's an interesting thing. I think that the chances are always better when there's a time of difficulty to get people galvanized, to get people to really sort of see and believe in themselves. And what I see interestingly happening, maybe a little bit more deeply for Quebec, but I think it's also happening here in Ontario, is that people are seeing Mr. Gagnon as someone who can do that. Someone who, because he's met some challenges on his own, done some things to a certain high level, is in a good position to call on Canadians and say, let's be together better than we can be on our own. And you know, I can't tell you when exactly the election will be, whether for sure there will be one in the fall. But I can tell you that if this isn't the end of the Harper government, it's probably the beginning of the end. And in the sense that they've had the chance. I think we are going to keep trying every which way we can to deliver for Canadians from the position they put us in the opposition benches. We have, you know, in my case, I would like to invite you all to consider helping out in terms of the cities and communities fund. We want to work directly with cities and communities across the country. What Mr. Gagnon is looking for is the federal government to acknowledge that there are orders of government, not levels of government. That we need to make sure that we treasure Canadians' access to good quality life, regardless of the size of the community. You know, there's an unfair kind of association that we have to accept responsibility to overcome, and it's only in cities that Liberals sort of have their sense of residence. I come from a small town, and to me, well, it just recently is no longer represented by Lego, but hopefully will shortly be again. Those small town values, if you like, are every bit Liberal. Respect for other people. You know, not being too full of yourself, something maybe we need to work to make sure we express all the time. And just this idea that we care about our neighbors and that we're not going to let people down. And you know, I don't know how to play in the news tonight, Mr. McNally's decision in this negotiation, but I have a lot of faith in the Canadian public. I used to sit there in that warehouse that was mentioned with no idea how we were going to feed 150,000 people, with people staying up till 1 in the morning, taking our boxes of powdered milk, breaking them up into little plastic bags, because we would not have in the morning enough to give a whole box to a family. You know, but somehow, some way, whenever we found an effective way, when we did our homework, we set the table properly and appealed to the Canadian public, they always came through. And that's where we have to start all of our considerations, from who runs in this riding to, you know, how we show the shortcomings of this government, to how we start exposing the possibilities that we can bring, even under the constrained circumstances that the big deficits these guys are running up have us under, is that we, you know, believe in the good possibilities of Canadians. We're facing a government that doesn't get on with the job because of that. But Liberals, I think, if we dig down, we can be the ones that set the table, and we're the ones that put Canada back on the right track. Thank you, Councillor.
So Gerard, just the board of directors and the Liberals in Halton everywhere, I want to share thanks and give you a couple of our tokens of appreciation here. Glen Abbey is a golf course, it's not exactly in our riding, but part of it is. Might Perry ready for a golf season.
That's great.
Okay, thanks again.
Great. For me to be well dressed, because my golf doesn't make me look good at all. Listen, I'd be happy to answer questions and take suggestions from you. That's what I'm really looking forward to tonight. And so anybody want to? Yep.
I understand that Master University and Master Hospital looking at the possibility addressing the isotope problem. Do you know much about that?
Yeah, well, what I do know about it is that they have a nuclear reactor that's there for research purposes and has produced isotopes in the past. And it's been there as a backup plan. And I guess still, one of the questions we need to know at some point, first job is to find a solution. The second thing is to find out how could this have happened, where we had a nuclear reactor shut down, opened by an act of parliament, overriding the nuclear authority, the watchdog, and then yet, not very many months later, it's now shut down for four months to maybe as long as a year. So it will take some time, unfortunately, for McMaster to be able to fill that gap. They say they could produce enough isotopes. They presented on this 4 times Canada's capacity. The thing to remember here that is not incidental. I just want to maybe relate back to something that I meant to say with the cue cards. So we produce 50% of what the world needs in these particular isotopes to be able to expose through radiated tests what's wrong with people all around the world. And I just don't know how you go from being 50% responsible to out of the business unilaterally like that, and then tell everybody to come around the world, please come and meet us in Toronto and discuss this problem that suddenly arose. It takes a lot of gall, I think. And the other thing is, we have a nuclear industry, and there's a lot of very impressive people enrolled. I know we have discussion about nuclear power and so on, but that needs to be taken fully into account, because we'll dismiss that's a research reactor at Chalk River, and it won't be viable without the revenue that comes in from the isotopes. Yes?
Yeah, Mr. Ignatieff talked a lot about prioritizing education at the convention.
Yep.
I'm wondering what the federal party's take is on Dalton McGuinty's ideas for integrating early childhood education into the mainstream educational system and putting them all in the same building, and if there's any chance of maybe the Liberal Party helping that along.
Well, in Halifax, not very long ago, Mr. Ignatieff talked about early learning as part of our social infrastructure, that it should be taken that way, that it's a missing piece. If we want people to grow up and be good citizens, we should start earlier, because every other country in the OECD, just all the organization, the economic developed countries, first top 24, has more people in early childhood development than we do, including the United States, by the way, in organized preschool supported things. And I'm a little biased on the McGuinty government plan, because we originally promised it in the education policy that I helped to write. And if you remember, that was thwarted a bit because the Harper government canceled the daycare, child care program that Mr. Martin and Mr. Dryden had put in place. And what would have evolved out of that was exactly what was talked about this week. So a specific decision on how, and just as importantly, when we're going to be able to put out a national child care program. But every single speech I've been at with Mr. Ignatieff, he's talked about us supporting the national child care plan. And so I would like to think that we'll be a willing partner with the McGuinty government in terms of how that's going to roll out. I haven't heard exactly what they're going to be able to do with their considerable pressures, because they're having to pick up the slack from a federal government that's not acting with alacrity. The provincial government had to get involved in the auto sector. Why? Because the federal government wasn't moving. They almost had to embarrass them into it. And so there's a lot of pressures on the Ontario dollar. They have no access like the national government does to revenues from Alberta or other places that for a while weren't being hit as hard. But anyway, I think the commitment is fulsome. I think what we have to be in mind, there will be a thinkers conference this summer. I know that hasn't fully announced and so on, but there will be a chance and opportunity for people to feed in the shape and the form that these things take. And I just understand that everyone's going to get a chance to feed in, and there'll be some folks brought together. And so the design of that, I would like to think, is going to be done over this summer. Like, it will be a busy summer for Liberals, and it should be. But we're really glad to get it. Our schools have a lot of space in them in Ontario. We have something like 300,000 empty spaces, and that could just about fit what we need for some of that child care.